Hi there, welcome to That Board Game Show. My name is James Wood, and today I'm going to show you Tiny Epic Tactics, a tactical combat game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Scott Almes and published by Gamelyn Games. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing on the solo variant for Tiny Epic Tactics, which is quite different from the multiplayer game. In fact, there are 4 distinct modes of play for this game. You've got the standard game, which is a 2 to 4 player competitive game, which basically is like a capture the flag kind of idea. You've got various territories on this map that you have to move into, control, and then keep control of for a certain number of rounds. If you manage to do that, then you'll move one of these flags along on this control card. And once you control a region for 3 rounds, then you will gain control of it and you'll get 5 points. Another way you will be gaining points in the competitive game is by capturing opponents' units. So you'll see on the cards that each unit has a little victory point star in the top right corner. And that denotes the number of points that character is worth to your opponent if they manage to capture that unit. Then there's also a 2v2 team play game where 2 players will face off against 2 other players, basically following the similar sort of rules. There is a 2 to 4 player battle mode, which is more of a free-for-all. And then there's a 1 player solo adventure, which is what I'll be showcasing today, and a 2 player cooperative mode. So quite a few different ways to play this game. And the core principles, the core mechanisms are the same across all of them. So as I'm going, I will explain the specific differences that are applied to the solo game. And unless otherwise stated, you'll see that the basic mechanisms, movement, combat, etc. is all very similar between the different modes of play. So the core of the game being a tactical combat game. So you'll see here we've got this hex grid map, and one of the really cool features of this game is this 3D terrain. So you'll see that we've got these different pieces that are making up the terrain here. And these actually all come just in the standard copy of the game. So all of this is just in the box, and you can use them as boxes to store all your bits. So it's a bit of a insert and a storage solution and 3D terrain. So you really have a tremendous amount of game in this tiny little box. And with that said, I think I'm going to show you the tremendous amount of game in the best way I know how, and that is to start playing and demonstrate and explain the rules and mechanisms as I encounter them. I've already done all the setup for the game. There are specific rules for the solo setup. It's similar to setting up for a 2-player game, but there's a couple minor tweaks. The main difference being that in a 2-player game, each player would pick a corner of the map. So you'll see I've got these green pawns. These represent my heroes on the map. And you'll see I've started with 2 in this corner over here, and I've got 2 in this corner over here. Now, were I playing against another human player, then they would have their units in that corner and in that corner. And there's tiny little stars in the corners to denote that those are the starting locations. Now in the solo game, to vary it up a little bit, instead of placing the solo opponent pieces in the corners, we randomize their location with these flags. So you'll see here, this piece representing the opponent's rogue is in this purple space. So you see there's this little purple flag here. So during setup, I took these 3 flags, I gave them a shake, I dropped one out, and let's say it was the purple one. Then I shook up these opponent's pieces and the rogue fell out. And then I placed the rogue on the big purple flag space. This is one of the control areas that you would be using in a multiplayer game. So I did that with 3 of them, and then the 4th one, because there's only 3 flags, was determined by flipping over one of these solo opponent cards, and it has a little compass. So in this case, it's showing east. When I drew it, it showed north, so I placed it adjacent to the last placed unit. That's all a little bit of bookkeeping for you right at the beginning. So let's skip over all of that and jump into the gameplay. And I've just realized that I actually need to place these opponent solo enemies out in a specific order. So it's supposed to be the fighter first, then the beast, then the rogue, then the wizard, in that specific order, because these guys are going to trigger off in a particular sequence when it's their turn. I've also got this tactics card in front of me here. I was given 2 at the beginning of the game, and I picked 1. The one I picked is shut down an enemy. If you capture an enemy target, then immediately perform 1 free action with any ally, even if weakened. And none of that probably makes sense to you right now. It will become clearer as we play. So I was given 2 of these cards. I picked this one to keep. The other one was shuffled back into the tactics deck. And how I chose the units that we have in front of me is I shuffled up each of these, and you'll see we have different unit types. So we have a fighter represented by this piece. We have a beast represented by this piece, a rogue represented by this piece, and a wizard represented by this piece. And there is an entire deck of cards for each of them. So here are all the rogue cards that you can choose from. So how it was dealt out at the beginning is I shuffled up this entire deck of rogues. I drew 2 of them. I chose 1 for myself, so I chose to play Ava over here. And I gave the other one, which was Nim, to my opponent, to the solo enemy. And these ones over here to the side, we'll come to those a bit later. So for now, they have no bearing, but as we play the game, you'll see what they're there for. And one final thing before we dive into the first turn is the main key difference of the solo play versus the multiplayer game. Our objective in the solo game is to capture these 6 arcane crystals, which are buried in the various dungeons dotted throughout the land. So now these dungeons are unique to the solo game. You don't play with the inside of these. These are purely used as terrain in the multiplayer game. In the solo game, you can actually enter them at these various portal locations. Wherever you see a little arrow, that represents a portal, which in the multiplayer game you can move through. So you can move from one portal over here to another one for 1 movement. In the solo game, you can still do that, or you can enter a dungeon through one of those portals. And then you have to move through the dungeon and get to the space with the crystal, so in this case up in the corner over here, rescue the crystal. It will then give us an immediate benefit, and then we can move on to the next one. And so the solo game really is very much a race against time. And the enemy units are kind of just there to get in your way and slow you down. So, with all of that preamble out the way, let's dive in with the first turn. You can do 3 actions per turn, and typically you're going to do that with 3 different units. So you'll see I've got 4 units here. I've got Rakwinder, my elephant beast. I have Ava, my human rogue. I have Dornoma, a wizard. And I have Jolene, a fighter. And each of these characters has a unique skill set. So the first thing we do before I take my turn is in the solo adventure, we move this little time tracker over, indicating that we now only have 6 turns remaining. That is one of the ways that we can lose the solo game. If this ever gets down to the red game over symbol, well, we've lost the game. And the way we can move that back up is by defeating the enemy units. So instead of gaining victory points for them like you would in the multiplayer game, they each have this little +2 hourglass in their corner. So each time I defeat one of these, I push the time tracker up by 2 spaces. So that's a bit of a way for me to gain a little bit of time while I work on getting all these crystals. The basic action types are to move or attack. Each character has a specific movement value. So Rakwinder over here has 3, Ava has 4, Dornoma has 4, and Jolene has 3. Meaning they can move up to, so my rogue over here has 4, they can move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Not diagonal. And then attack is broken up into basically 3 different types of attack. You can do a missile attack, which is a ranged attack. You can do a melee attack, which is a attack adjacent to an enemy unit on the same level as you, or you can do a spell attack. Now, not all spells are attacks. Some spells have other effects. And before I get any deeper into all the little nitty-gritty rules, because there's quite a lot to take in on this game, I'm just going to start playing, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. Because I really think that will be the easiest way for you to digest all of this information. So, we've moved the time tracker. Now, I'm going to pick one of my units to do an action with. So, my main goal in the solo game is to get into these dungeons and rescue these crystals. So I'm going to try and move towards that. So let's take Ava here, and we can read her special ability, which is Sprint. On her turn, she gains +2 movement as long as she does not attack. That's going to be very helpful in this solo game because it means she can really sprint around. So we will take her, and she is represented by our rogue figure over here. And I'm actually going to stand these up for while I'm playing, because it just makes it easier to maneuver them. So she's going to go 1, 2, 3. Then she's at this portal. You might not be able to see that. Let's show you on the top over there. So there is a doorway over there. Now this big box is the final dungeon, which contains the Crystal of Glory. We cannot rescue that one until we've rescued all the others. So I can't enter here just yet. And another wrinkle is that I can't enter this dungeon as long as there are any units, my own or the enemy, on top of it. So any space with units on it is basically locked off. So that's another big part of the solo game, is maneuvering yourself and maneuvering the enemies to try and get them off these boxes so that you can then sneak into the dungeon and go rescue the crystals. Let's move 4. I'll go through the portal to over here. 5, I'm going to move into this dungeon because there's nobody on top of it. So I flip it over, and my 5th movement brought me into there. So you come in at the little entrance, and then I can now maneuver myself towards the crystal. I can't move into this space with the rogue because that space denotes a space that only the wizard can enter into. That's a magic spell trap something there. So now the last movement is I'm going to move into this little red space with my rogue for my 6th movement. And as soon as you enter a red space like that, that represents a minion that is lurking in the dungeon, which you now have to fight. So now we go to our solo enemy deck, we flip over the top card, we ignore whatever it says at the top of it, and we only pay attention to the bottom half. And in this case, it is a polymorphed bunny. It runs away scared, no negative effect. Okay, so I scared a little bunny on my journey through the dungeon, and nothing bad happened. Phew! Not all of them are quite that easy. So we lucked out with that first move. Now, on her next turn, she'll be able to move again. I can't move her again now, because you can never do the same action twice with the same unit. So now I have to start moving and positioning my other characters. So let's see, let's look at Rackwinder or Winder here, our elephant beast. He has a movement of 3. He has an attack value of 3, meaning when he does a melee attack, he deals 3 damage, and he rolls 3 dice. And you'll see how that works when we get to it. His special ability is Iron Stance. He cannot be knocked back. And he has Phalanx. May prevent an adjacent ally from being knocked back. However, he takes 2 damage for each knockback he prevents. And knockbacks happen when you do melee attacks. Again, you'll see how that works when it happens, because it's bound to happen eventually. My other option is my wizard over here, Donoma. Has a movement of 4. She has a melee attack value of 1, so she only does 1 damage. And she has a spell with a range of 4. Her spell is Drain. Target takes 1 damage, plus 1 per blue result. So when you do a spell, you spend mana, and for each mana you spend, you can roll 1 die, up to a max of 3. And for each blue result on the dice rolled, you will deal 1 additional damage for that attack. And then her ongoing special effect is during drain, she heals 0 health, +1 per blue result rolled. Cannot heal from countering. Then Jolene has a movement of 3, attack value of 2. She has a missile attack value of 2 with a range of 4, meaning she can do a ranged attack up to 4 spaces away. And an ongoing effect of Rally. Allies within 4 range of her deal +1 damage with all their attacks. Okay, so she kind of wants to be in the thick of things with all of your allies close around her. So I think playing the solo game, my main focus is to get these crystals. So I just want to move into the dungeons as fast as I can. Let's move my beastie in. Let's bring him 1, 2, 3, coming down towards this one, because there's nobody on top of it. I think I will send my wizard to try climb up on one of these spaces, to try maybe deal with this rogue or something. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. That is my 3 actions. I have moved and moved and moved. I haven't done any attacking yet because I haven't gotten to a place where it makes sense to attack yet. And that is the end of my turn. At the end of a player's turn, you draw 1 card from the tactics deck and add it to your hand. And you can only ever hold 2 of these at a time. So if at the end of my next turn I haven't used one of them, I'll have to discard down to 2. The new one I just got is Search the Forest. If you move a second ally into a forest space so that your forces occupy 2 forest spaces, then all allies in forest spaces may immediately restore to either full ammunition or full mana. Okay, so basically a lot of this stuff is just going to start making sense as we do it. So I think from now on, rather than going through every little detail on every little card, I'm just going to explain them as they become relevant, as they actually are resolved. Because otherwise I think it's just too much information right at the beginning, and I think we're already past that point. Okay, so let's move on to the solo enemy's turn. So how they work is we flip over the top card of the solo enemy deck, and this card will tell us which enemy unit activates. So it tells us at the top here, the rogue will activate. So we place this card underneath the rogue, and the rogue will now do an action. And they go through a very specific series of events to try and determine what they're going to do. First, they will try and do a melee attack. If there's no one adjacent to them, they will try to do a missile or spell attack. If there's no one in range, they will then move. They will then try to do a melee attack again, and then they'll try to do a spell or ranged attack. So that is their little sequence of steps that they'll go through every turn. Basically, they're just trying to beat me down and prevent me from getting into these dungeons. So looking at our rogue over here, first thing we'll do is ascertain where they are. They are up here. So there's no one adjacent to them, so they can't do a melee attack. So the next thing they'll check for is a missile or spell attack. So their missile attack has a range of 5, and they get +1 range if their target is on a lower terrain. So with them up on this higher level, they can basically have a range of 6 to anyone below them, and that works the other way around as well. So they would have a range of -1 for anyone above them. So let's see, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it looks like I moved my wizard right into the range of the rogue. Were I playing clever, I probably wouldn't have done that, but oh well. It's given a great opportunity for me to now demonstrate how combat works. So they have missile range, so they will not move. They'll camp out right where they are, and they will attack my wizard. Okay, so they will simply deal 2 damage right away. So they'll deal 2 damage to my wizard, 1, 2. They then have piercing shot. They would deal 2 additional damage if the target is 4 or 5 spaces away. So I want to make absolutely certain that I never end with an exactly 4 or 5 range of this rogue, because that 4 damage could finish these off pretty quick. And that is it. They don't do anything else. They don't roll any dice for that attack. Their card here that activated them had this little +3 movement, so had they needed to move, instead of just having their 4 range, they would have been able to move up to 7 spaces. But as the case is, they have now attacked my wizard. Now, my wizard can counterattack. So if they have range, which they do not. So I've only got a range of 4 on my spell, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't get up there. If my wizard were closer, so let's say my wizard were like over there, then I would be able to immediately counter that attack, basically getting a free attack action back against the enemy. And the enemy units will do the same to me. So if I attack them, if they're able to, either melee or ranged attack, they will counter every single turn. So that's a big part of this game, is the 1-2 punch kind of system, whereby you attack, they counter, you attack, they counter, they attack you, you counter, and so it goes. And that is the end of the solo enemy's turn. So the solo system here is really quite streamlined and well automated. I now have my turn. I will advance the time tracker another step. I am going to move my wizard 1, 2, 3, because it costs +1 movement to go to a higher level. And I'm actually just going to leave them there, 1, 2, 3, 4, because now they're within range of this rogue. And because I've just flipped this card over, I know that the rogue won't trigger again for a while. Because if I draw a solo enemy and it's another rogue, I simply will trigger the leftmost enemy. So as these go, they get a little bit deterministic of you can figure out what's happened and what's likely to happen next. So you can position yourself accordingly. Now, I want to do a spell attack on the rogue over here. In order to do a second action with the same unit that you've just used, you have to weaken them. So I'll take one of these weakened markers and I'll place it on Donoma, indicating that she's exhausted. Now she won't be able to do anything on her next turn because the weakened token will only go away at the end of my next full turn. So she's going to spend 3 mana, 1, 2, 3, to roll all 3 dice over here. Whoops. In my nice little Emperor's Workshop dice tray. If you like the look of this dice tray, you can actually pick up your own from emperorsworkshop.coza. I'll leave a link down below. And I had this custom ordered. They have a couple of standard ones, but you can basically send them any image you want and they'll print it on a dice tray for you. So let's roll all 3 of these dice. And we got precisely 1 blue result. Yay. That was underwhelming. So she does 1 damage by default, +1 for every blue result she gets. So that's 2 damage on Nim over here, 1, 2. Then, I've been rather silly, but I will. She will use her Soul Siphon. During drain, she heals 1 per blue result, so she will heal 1. That's quite good. But now, I forgot about the rule I just explained to you, and that is Nim will now counter. I'm actually going to rewind just a little bit, because remembering that this special ability here, Piercing Shot, will apply when they counter, and I'm currently exactly 4 spaces away, which is bad news. So I had 1 movement left. I would have used that to move 1 space over there, because now I'm 3 spaces away, not 4, which means the Piercing Shot doesn't deal extra damage, but they will counter and deal 2 damage back to me. 1, 2. Oh, bothersome. Okay, so that's 2 of my 3 actions. Now I will move my rogue and will collect this crystal. So we have a little indicator here that this is the 2x2 crystal for the little 2x2 box. So that is the Crystal of Plenty. Capture bonus. All allies replenish their ammunition and mana to full. Huzzah! So my wizard over here, who's spent some mana, now has all of their mana back. If they had been spending ammunition to do missile attacks, you'll see how those work shortly. So we flip that over, and now we have rescued 1 of the 6 crystals required to win the game. That was my first move. I automatically pop out at a portal. So now Ava has +2 movement as long as she doesn't attack, so she's still got 5 movement left. So I could just bounce through a portal and go to another location, which I think is precisely what I'm going to do, and try and rescue as many of these crystals as I can. Yes. Let's go somewhere that needs a lot of maneuvering. So she's going to go 2. Then she's going to go 3. She's going to enter this dungeon. She's going to pop in over here. Boom. As long as she's in here, we can't get into this one. She is going to go this way because this purple space over here is a space only the rogue can go through. It's a little lockpick trap. So she's going to go 4, 5, encounter a minion. So we flip over the minion card and we encounter a kobold. Must pay 3 ammunition or mana, otherwise take 2 damage. Fortunately, we have ammunition, so 1, 2, 3. She spends 3 of her ammunition to fight off the kobold. And she has 1 movement left. She's just going to go bink over to there. Then in her next turn, she can go through the purple space, doesn't cost anything, and she can keep moving. This is a good example to show you how some of the other spaces work. So if she wanted to move through this space here, that represents a cave-in. So there's a whole bunch of rubble on the ground there. You would roll a number of dice equal to your strength value based on your melee attack. So if she wanted to move through there, she'd roll only 1 die, and you're looking for a knockback result. Basically how the knockback results work is when you do a melee attack, you roll dice. So in her case, you roll 1. In my beast over here, he rolls 3. And for every knockback result you get, you knock the unit you just attacked back 1, 2, 3 spaces, however many. So if you want to move through a cave-in, you have to roll your strength and get knockback symbols. Otherwise, you lose 1 or 2 movement, I forget. I think it's 2 movement points, and you can't go through there until you actually roll a success. You just need at least 1. So that would not be a good place for her to go. The green space over here, if you want to enter that, that represents a trap. You roll 3 dice, and for every green result, which in that case would be none, for every green result you get, you take 2 damage. And then the blue space over here represents a magic trap that only the wizard can go through, and they must spend 2 mana to move through that space. And I think that's pretty much, yeah, that's all of the different types of terrain that you're going to encounter in the different spaces, except for water. So in the dungeons, there are water spaces, like you've got the blue water spaces here. A water space costs +1 movement to enter. So that is the end of my turn, because I've done 2 actions with my wizard, and I've done 1 action with Ava. I did not use either of these. I did not capture an enemy unit, and I didn't move a second unit into a forest space. So now, end of my turn, I draw another tactics card, which is give it your all. If you weaken an ally this turn, and you already have at least 1 other ally weakened, immediately cure weakness. I'm going to hang on to that because I have a weakened ally. If I use one of my other allies twice in the next turn to weaken them, that will trigger. So I'm going to remove this shut down enemy card, discard that. So now it is the solo enemy's turn. We will flip over their card, which tells us that the beast will activate. So we will find their beast, we'll place the card underneath there. And now Lord Theodulf will activate, and he will deal +3 damage to any melee attacks he does this turn. Ouch. Okay, so let's see, where is he? He is hanging out over here. So he has no one directly adjacent, so he can't do a melee attack, and he has no ranged attacks. So he will then move. He has a movement of 6. To determine how he will move and where he will move to, we use the little compass on his card here, so it's pointing south. He will first determine the enemy closest to him and simply move towards them. And in this case, that would be, he ignores any enemies in dungeons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so equidistant. So in case of a tie, we look at the compass, we draw a line south, And then you basically just scan clockwise until you bump into the first enemy unit. So he will move towards my beast, and he will move north or south until he's in line with them, and then he'll move west. So they don't move necessarily in the most optimal location. They'll move through water, they'll climb over terrain if they have to. They won't necessarily take the smartest route, they're just going to take the most direct route. So he's going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now he will try to do a melee attack again. He still can't, he is just one space short of that, thank goodness. And so that is the end of his turn. Jolly good. So he is all done. None of his special effects came into effect because he didn't do any fighting. So now it comes back to me. I advance the time tracker. Bing! And unless I rescue these crystals incredibly quick or start beating these guys down, I'm probably going to lose. Because that time tracker is ticking down rapidly. I will be honest with you, I've never been very good at this game. I can understand all the basic rules, but the tactics and the strategies, I very often find myself doing things that I want to undo later. So don't necessarily use this as a great strategy video. This is just showing you the basics. Okay, so I want to weaken an ally and move people into the forest. That's probably a smart play. So Ava is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 because she can move through the lock. She triggers the Crystal of Pain because it shows us the 5x4 dungeon. Crystal of Pain, select a single enemy unit, it loses 3 health. Okay, well, we'll weaken the one that's already the most weak. 1, 2, 3. Now, if we can take them out, then we gain some time. That was her 4 movements. As soon as you step on the crystal, you get spat out of the dungeon and come out at a portal. So she pops out over there. We put that back on top. Now, she could keep moving because she's got this +2 move if she doesn't attack. But because I have this Give It Your All ability, if you weaken an ally this turn and you already have at least one other ally weakened, I do, then immediately cure weakness from all allies. So I will weaken her to do a second action, and she will do a melee attack on him, which is probably not a great idea, but oh well. And then that triggers this tactics card, so I discard that and immediately cure weakness from both of them. Bing! Which means she can now do an action. Hopefully, she can finish him off. But first, I need to resolve the attack from Ava, so she deals 2 damage when doing a melee attack, and she's attacking him, so he takes 1, 2. Then I roll 1 die, and I hopefully knock him back, because otherwise he's going to counterattack and it's going to hurt. Nope. That is not a knockback. Wah, wah. That wasn't very good, because now he counters. And he does 4 damage. Ouch. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was rather silly. Oh, I did do my capture bonus. I did 3 damage over there. I was supposed to flip that over. Now we've rescued 2 of the 6 crystals. Then, during a melee attack, all enemies other than target within 3 range of him take 1. So my beastie also takes damage. Then stun enemies that are not the primary target of Feral Slash cannot counter. So that stops me countering his attack. And he rolls 3 dice, and I'm hoping for a bunch of blanks, because if you roll a knockback and you can't go back a space, so if the space behind you is not empty, you take an additional wound for every knockback that you can't move. Oh, phew. Okay. Blanks. Okay, so for a melee attack, that is the best possible roll. Well, for a melee attack from the enemy, that's the best possible roll. If I was attacking him, that's the worst possible roll. Okay, phew, she needs to heal. I'll explain how that works when I get to it. So for now, I'm going to use Donoma to attack Nim. I'm going to spend 3 mana, 1, 2, 3, because why not? Roll all 3 dice and try to do extra. So I automatically do 1. Let's just do that. Bing! They've taken 1 damage. And there's an additional 1 damage. Bing! So now they're down to 0. I heal 1 for each magic symbol rolled, so that's good. They are now wiped out, so they cannot counter naturally. So they are removed from play. Just put them there for now. Their card gets discarded. And I gain 2 time, 1, 2, on the time tracker. Yay! A unique element of this solo game is as soon as you defeat an enemy, they technically get shuffled back into the deck. So let's just do that. Okay. And then you draw another one. So you immediately respawn another enemy. So basically, you're never going to defeat all the enemy units on the map. They're always going to keep on respawning. So the only real benefit to taking them out is 1, if they have a particularly nasty special ability, and 2, to buy you that extra time. So now, as soon as we spawn the new one, they are a rogue, so we will take the rogue figure. We will take the 3 flags. Let's remove the dice from our tray here. We'll give the flags a shuffle, a shake, a randomize, and orange. So the rogue, this new rogue, Zazili, is going to spawn on the orange flag over there. So now that is fantastic because it means this dungeon is now clear to go into. However, we can't go into this dungeon until we've rescued all the others. So that's a bit of a shame. But that is probably one of the best ways to clear off the dungeons. The annoying thing is I could have rolled the purple flag and then it would have spawned right back there. And I'll be honest, that happens quite a lot. That is the end of my turn. Ava has done 2 actions. Donoma has done 1. And now I will draw a tactics card at the end of my turn, which is discover a hot spring if you end an ally's movement in a water space. Interesting. Usually you don't want to end in water because when you're in a water space, you take +1 damage from any attacks against you. But this hot spring means if I end an ally's movement in water, I immediately restore that ally to full health. Oh, that's very nice. I need to send Ava into a hot spring. Okay, but that is for my next turn. Fortunately, we know the beast is not going to trigger again. So we will draw solo enemy card. It is the fighter. So we will place that on King Glut. And King Glut is going to try and do something. Where is King Glut? King Glut is up over here. Okay, so he will try melee attack. He has no one to melee attack. So he will try a missile attack. He only has a range of 2, so he can't missile attack anyone. So he will move. And he will move towards the closest enemy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's further, that's further. So he'll move towards my rogue, which is bad. Let's hope he can't get there. So he will move first. He'll move north. Well, north or south. So he'll move 1, 2, 3, because it costs +1 to move into water. 4. And then he will check for melee attack. He can't. He will check for ranged attack. He can't. He is now done. Except he's got +2 movement. So he would go 1, 2, which means he can now missile attack. Oh, bothersome. Okay, so he melee attacks, which means my rogue just died. Yeah, that was quick. Okay, so your ranged attacks, you can shoot through other units. They basically don't count. And he does 3 damage. If he hadn't drawn that +2 movement, I would have been fine. But I didn't, so oh well. He deals 3 damage. Ava only has 3 health. So 1, 2, 3. Ava has been captured by King Glut. And unlike the solo enemies, mine do not respawn. So she is gone. Out of play. Never to be heard from again. Oh dear. Okay, that means I am off on a bad foot because she was my fastest mover as well. This is a problem. This is a big problem. And play proceeds back over to me. So I am going to move the time tracker down 1. And now I want to show you how a normal missile attack would work. And I want to show you how a normal melee attack would work. Let me move him. Now this isn't necessarily a very strategic play. I'm just wanting to demonstrate a couple things. So he's going to move over to there for 1. He's then going to weaken himself to do a melee attack because I want to attack Beastie over here and show you how a normal melee attack would work. So he immediately does 3 damage. 1, 2, 3. He then rolls all 3 dice. And for every knockback, he would knock this unit back 1 space. Now, because there is another unit directly behind it, it gets knocked back into that other unit and he takes 1 additional wound. Or 2 or 3 additional wounds, depending how you roll. Now, Lord Theodulf will counter that attack. So he counters with an attack strength of 4. He deals 1, 2, 3, 4 damage. He rolls all 3 dice. But it doesn't really matter because Rakwander can't be knocked back. Which is a good thing because he would have taken 2 additional hits. Ouch. So he is immune to knockbacks basically because he's a big, hefty elephant. You don't mess around with a big, hefty elephant in hand-to-hand combat. That was 2 of my 3 actions. I can only do 1 more. So the smart thing in that instance to do would have been to duck through a portal and go pick up another crystal and so on and so forth. But I just want to demonstrate how a missile attack would work, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. Because you've basically seen all the basics. You've seen a couple tactics cards work. You've seen me rescue a couple crystals. We're going to just keep on going at it until eventually all of these are rescued, or all of my people are taken out, or we run out of time. So to just demonstrate how a missile attack would work, let's say that my fighter was over there within range of that wizard. The first thing you do when you do a missile attack is you spend 1 ammunition. Then you roll your dice. So in this case, she has to roll 3 dice. You'll see sometimes, like my rogue that I've lost over here, Ava, only has to roll 2 dice. And for each green result, so let's see, there's a green result, that represents a miss. For every miss, you have to spend 1 additional ammunition. Only if you're able to spend the ammunition does your attack succeed. So in this instance, that attack would have succeeded, which means 1, 2 damage would have been done to the wizard. And then the wizard, with a range of 5 on her spell, would be able to counterattack, and so it would go. So that's just the specifics of how a missile attack works, because that's the one thing I didn't get to just show you in gameplay. You'll just keep on playing and playing and playing until all of those are rescued, in which case you win, or you run out of time, or all of your units are taken out. That pretty much wraps up the solo game. There's a couple other minor details that didn't come up in that gameplay, so let me just go over those quickly. The different types of terrain have different effects. So if you're in a forest space, you have +1 defense. You basically take 1 less damage from any attacks against you. If you're in a water space, as I already mentioned, you take 1 additional damage when you're attacked. Anytime you enter a village space, so if I were to move my wizard into this village over here, you immediately replenish your mana or ammunition all the way up to full and heal 4 damage. So if I'd been able to maneuver Ava a little bit before that attack happened, she would have been fine. So we have a peaks space over here. So these peak spaces, you've got 1 over there and 2 over there. If one of your characters with a ranged attack, so your fighter, your wizard, or your rogue, is in a peak, it costs +1 movement to enter them. So for instance, if my wizard were over here, instead of costing 1, 2 to go up a level, it would cost 1, 2, 3 movement, to go up a level into the peak space. You then have infinite range. So you can use your spell or your missile attack on you can target any unit anywhere in the realm. This special space here is a ballista. It costs +1 movement to enter. And as soon as you enter, you may take a second special action as long as you're in this space. So when you move in there, if it's your first action to move, you can weaken your unit to take a second action. And the special action of the ballista, you pick an enemy unit within 4 range. So 1, 2, 3, 4 there, for instance. They immediately take 1 damage, and then you can knock them back 1 space in any direction. So you could say knock back over there, or because you can knock back in any direction, you could knock this unit back into the wall and they would take an additional damage. So if you can get one of your units to just park out on there, you can sort of pick off anything coming close. And that pretty much sums it up. You've seen how the enemy units respawn as you play, so each time you take one out, you'll just shuffle them back into their deck and draw a new one. And I think that gives you a pretty good idea of how Tiny Epic Tactics plays. A lot of what you've seen here is applicable to the multiplayer game as well as the solo. And the 2-player cooperative game is pretty much exactly this, but with essentially 2 people playing the solo game at the same time. So each player has their own set of solo enemies that they've got to deal with. And you would start the game out with one player putting their units there, and 2 of their units there, 2 of their units there. The other player would put 2 units there and 2 units there. And then you would spawn out 8 additional enemies from the rest of the components available for 4 players. So with that, I shall wrap it up for today. That should give you a good sense of how Tiny Epic Tactics plays. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please drop those down in the comments below. And with that, I shall say thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show.